Dr. Frankenstein said he sewed and stitched deep into the night without a hitch until he heard me scream as he threw the switch. All alone. I went from the castle to the discotheque. I lit up the floor with the bolts in my neck.
Okay, so with that, hi and welcome to The Hype with me, as always, Brian and John.
Howdy. As always, caffeinated, Brian and John.
We're 20 cups in.
Yeah, I like it when we do 2 episodes in a day, because my second intro is a lot more
Don't
like...
give it away.
You're definitely like 6 cups in, right?
Oh, way more than 6.
Oh, like 7 or 8.
I might have spoiled we were recording this one a little bit early, but oh well. So this week we are joined again by almost always... there's a lot of A's in there.
We are our winners.
CHEWIE,
Hi.
almost always Ryan.
Hello.
And first time ever, I'll introduce yourself.
Hello, my name is Christopher. Go by Chris. I don't even know why I could just call myself Christopher at all.
Well, now all the podcast listeners are like, oh, Christopher.
And
Good
one very
old
interesting
Christopher.
fact about Christopher that I just learned, he does not have a smartphone.
No, I do not. In fact, I think my roommates are going to try to have an intervention with me in a couple of weeks to try to get me an iPhone.
What are you talking about? We
You don't need an
had so
iPhone.
many interventions for
Android is so much better. Android is so much better.
As much as I would love to keep talking about this, because I do want to mention that I love being able to hang up on somebody, which you can't really do on a smartphone.
Click.
I love that.
Yeah.
Click.
I can do the flip with my case, but
No one's gonna
not
hear it.
as
That
sensitive.
sound
now
doesn't
you
come
got to do
across
the
on
good
dumb
day
phone.
to you, sir,
Yeah.
thing when you do that.
Exactly.
Good
Which
day.
they have in the movie we're going to talk about today.
Oh, yeah, they do.
Yeah, they do. So today's movie is the first of our Halloween month, which we did not vote on this episode because it's just a little bit easier just to start out.
We did. We just didn't do it on the podcast.
Exactly. So we are doing today for our Universal Month of Horror, Universal Monster, I should be specific about, Month of Horror, which was really made because of the Universal movies made all these monster things. Now, granted, if we do later vote on a film that's not necessarily made by Universal, that's not the end of the world. It's the monsters that matter more than the company that makes the film.
Right.
I feel like I should just get that out there. But today we're going to start with the original Frankenstein,
Yeah.
which I'm really excited to talk about today because it is...
Or should I say?
Looks like we know what everybody's favorite line is.
Exactly. We're all
There goes our
different
quote.
iterations.
We all have the same one, by the way.
We did. Yeah.
So the problem with doing a movie from the 30s is that finding a review for it that's under a paragraph or 2 is damn near impossible. So I'm not going to do the review system today, and trying to find numbers of the money this thing made is also damn near impossible. So I'm not going to do the numbers today. And today is just going to be an episode about the movie itself, which I think is totally fine.
Let's jump right into it,
Yeah,
shall
So,
we?
So-
translation, people have a lot to say, and it probably made a lot of money.
The thing about this, it did make a lot of money. Quick thing about it for everyone who's listening to this and stuff. I'm Ryan's roommate, and the reason why he bought me in here is specifically because he knows I'm a Universal horror freakazoid.
Oh, absolutely.
Perfect.
So he knows that I know a lot about these films and stuff. And yeah, it did make a lot of money, specifically because this and Dracula kind of brought horror into the mainstream during the 30s and 40s. It could be argued that without this film, Dracula, and if you guys talk about it later on, The Wolfman or The Mummy or one of those and stuff, that you actually wouldn't have a real serious horror genre nowadays.
Oh, absolutely. And we'll get into this as we start talking about the episode, but you watch this movie and it's like, wow, almost all modern horror borrows from from either Dracula, as you said before, or this one. And it's just like, holy shit. And just watching it's just like, wow, I can just see bits of movies that I've seen my entire life all in this 1 hour and 11-minute movie.
Yes, so one thing that I love about it is also how utterly short it is.
It is, just a real quick little, it's like watching a long episode of a TV show. It's like, okay,
Absolutely.
great.
There was, I had never seen this before yesterday.
Yeah.
That was the first time I've ever seen, because I've just never seen all the old originals, and there was a lot of room to add things. There's a lot
I
of
think
points
it's
where
fine.
I'm like, I wish there was more, because this is kind of meh.
Well, let's get this out of the way for anybody who's a fan of the book. This is
love the
not
book.
the book.
Yeah.
This is so different from the book,
Oh
which
my
I'm
God.
sure we're going to get into. It's not even funny.
Oh, yeah.
My favorite Frankenstein movie is Mary Shelley's Frankenstein by Kenneth Branagh.
Oh, I think you're the only fan.
I might be. But I think that
army
movie
of one.
captures the book the best. This one is so different from the book.
Oh, am I going to give you something you need to check out? Then it should be playing actually through the Fathom events this month if you haven't seen it. And this is also for anybody who hasn't seen it that's listening to this. Frankenstein, they did a play version of it a couple of years ago, directed by Danny Boyle.
Oh, I've heard of this.
It stars Johnny Lee Miller and Benedict Cumberbatch.
Holy
Are you
shit.
talking about the movie
Yeah, that
now
sounds
with
great.
Harry Potter and
No. This is so they did it completely on stage and they filmed it, and now like I think once a year they play it on Fathom. Because I saw it last year, then I saw it 2 years before that.
Very cool.
And what they do with it that's kind of interesting, because you notice I didn't talk about the parts that they play, because they switch roles depending on which performance you see. So Benedict Cumberbatch and Johnny Lee Miller switch the roles of Dr. Frankenstein and the monster. So they'll play one role one night, and then the next night they'll switch the roles.
That's fucking.
That's
insane.
pretty
That's
intriguing,
pretty
because then
great,
you're seeing
actually.
2 different plays if you
Yeah.
go both. Yeah.
Yeah, and you're seeing 2 completely different performances, and it's very true to the book. They added a couple of interesting little tidbits that I like in there, but it's if anybody is a fan of the book and you could find it near your theater, I cannot recommend it enough. Check it out.
Okay.
Yeah, I thought you were talking
With
about
that,
the new...
that's kind of a good little segue into doing. I want to do really quick, a nice little short. Where have you been doing? And then we're gonna break into the actual breakdown of this thing, and then we'll get started on this. So for where have you been doing? I'm gonna let you go first.
Well, being as how we're talking about Frankenstein, I guess it's appropriate for me to say this. I went to Halloween Horror Nights last week.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so it's appropriate for that. So I highly recommend it to whoever wants to check it out.
It's Universal Studios.
Yeah,
for the uneducated.
Universal Studios,
in LA.
Hollywood on the West Coast, and Orlando, Florida on the East Coast. So sorry for the people that are in Maine that are listening to this.
or just the flyover states.
Yeah, but in New York, but an argument against you do have Stephen King living there, so you should be fine in terms of scares.
Yep.
But yeah, it was a really good time, really fun time. I think they did a really good job with the mazes this year, especially the Crimson Peak one, which is designed, I found out, by Guillermo del Toro.
Does it ruin anything in the movie or no?
No, it was funny because like it's kind of the one drawback of it is that because they know people have not seen the movie yet, it's also a little bit very abstract. So there are rooms that you walk into where you have no idea. Sorry, I'm like the biscuits and everything. And everything. But there are a lot of rooms in there where you walk in there and it's like, wow, this is really designed, really cool and everything. Like, I have no idea what this has to do with the film or anything like that. Like, you
That's
can tell
kinda fun,
there was a thing and stuff. The one I suggest you don't go into because it was very blah was the This Is the End in 3D one. I don't know why they decided to take a comedy and make a horror maze out of it.
Yeah.
That's kind of weird.
Yeah.
That's a very
At some point,
strange choice.
does what's his face sit on my chest and scream, "I'm gonna titty fuck you"?
No, unfortunately, that
Because I
doesn't.
would definitely go
That
in
would be
there
worth
if
it.
that was going to
You
happen.
do run into spoiler warning, so it's don't listen for the next 10 seconds if you don't want to hear this. You do run into a possessed Jonah Hill, but I was very upset that they didn't go all out
Yeah.
and you didn't see a dick swinging devil at one point in time.
That was
Yeah.
And then
Point.
holding his dick, going, "No."
Yeah, exactly. Like I thought when I first saw the maze, I was like, if they do this, this maze will automatically jump to number 1 in my book. But they didn't have the guts to do it.
That sucks.
I just
Yeah.
want Jonah Hill screaming at me, I'm gonna titty fuck you. What are these
just so
You know,
much-
I'm sure if you meet him,
big
that can
B's
be
or little
arranged.
C's?
He did.
Seems like he'd be down for that.
Jonah Hill is in the maze, and I mean, he does tell you, "I'm not that compelled. I'm not compelled." But
That's fine. All right, I'll go next. I mentioned 2 episodes ago that I recently got back into Destiny. So
Okay.
I'll mention this time that I signed up with, not signed up, but I got 5 of my friends together and we decided to take on the Vault of Glass, which none of us had done before. One of us had watched a lot of playthroughs, so they kind of knew like what the mechanics were going to be. And it's a motherfucker, to say the least. We did not finish it. That
Yeah.
last guy is a son of a bitch, and it was getting close to my bedtime, and I was like, all right, guys, I'm sorry.
You really need to devote most of your day for that encounter
Well,
because there's all this long gameplay, and then you get to
Yeah, and then
the
you
boss.
get to that boss, and it takes a long fucking time.
To
Like a
that credit-
long time.
The whole time you were playing and I was in the other room, you never sounded angry.
Oh, it was a blast. I had a
Yeah.
ton of fun with my friends. Again,
And
Most of the time, I can tell when you're starting to get really frustrated because I'm going to put more pillows in the room so you throw your controller in the right
Yeah.
spot. But you never got to that point.
no, I never got mad. It was a lot of, because Destiny is such a fun game to play with friends that like the whole time it's like I'm having a blast just playing this with my friends because I never really got into online gaming that much, so that when I still do it every now and then, it's like I fucking love doing this.
see, I don't like multiplayer in general, just because there's so many factors, and a lot of times the people you play with are annoying. This was like the first time. The Vault of Glass was like the first time you get together with some friends and you understand the whole point of year 1 of Destiny.
Yeah.
Like you're like when everyone can say like, oh, it's all the end game stuff. Like all MMO people will say that, but until you actually do that, you're like, oh, this game clicks for me. I see.
You suddenly understand why everyone didn't stop playing for that whole year because it was so much fun. It was great. I wish we could have stayed up later and finished it, but say la vie.
I'll go next. I was feeling a little bummed out the other day, so I decided to watch a movie that is kind of my comfort movie, and that is Scott Pilgrim.
Oh, okay.
It's
a good-
Edgar Wright.
Oh, amazing.
And it hits all my nerd buttons in all the right ways. It does. It really
It's
does.
very sexual.
Yeah. I mean, it could be.
My nerd buttons.
But also Edgar
I
Wright.
have 2 of them.
I have 3.
What?
I have several thousand.
Wait, what?
Moving on.
No. Moving on.
Go on.
Just watching it again is just like the editing. Edgar Wright has an amazing way to edit comedy.
Yeah.
That no other person in filmmaking does. And it's like there's a lot of scenes where it just jumps right to the next one, and quick editing, smart editing. I was really drawn into that, and it was interesting to see how cartoony it was just coming off of watching Kung Fu Hustle, where they had some very interesting similar moments that I found fun kind of comparing. Like Chris Evans throwing Scott Pilgrim into the building, like that elasticity of the human figure, I guess, was very neat to see and kind of compare the two.
Right.
Edgar Wright once described that Scott Pilgrim as a musical, only instead of people singing, they start fighting in it, which I
Yes.
actually think is a
Perfect.
very
That's such
appropriate description of that picture.
That's perfect. Although I would have totally watched a Scott Pilgrim musical.
Well, you did have that musical. Like there was that one scene
Yeah,
that
that's
the
true.
character did
Well,
break
and
out in
what's
song.
funny this time is I didn't recall leading up to the musical moment in that beginning that for at least a few lines before it, they were rhyming the whole time.
Oh,
So
yeah.
like as they start rhyming, I'm like, this sounds so kind of rhymey. Oh wow! Like I didn't catch that first time.
That's right from the comic book, like that
Yeah.
whole the whole rhyming interchange stuff. By the way, if you haven't read the comic book, I cannot recommend that enough.
He owns it.
But yeah, that's all I got.
I'll go next. Last week, we talked about Doctor Who at length, and I was actually going to take that, mention that in mine last week, but I'll say what I was going to say this week, which is just kind of a general overview of my fall TV programming so far.
3
I've been
hours
trying
later.
to catch up on whatever has been premiering. So Doctor Who has been terrible, and you can listen to that episode. But I watched The Muppets, which was weird.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to keep watching. I don't know if I can recommend that yet.
That Tom Bergeron joke at the end sold me on the entire show.
Well, it's if you're used to kind of everything that's come before, the Muppets have gone in a different direction stylistically and kind of
yeah.
character-wise. There's a lot of like the relationship stuff, like people sleeping with puppets. Like there's this weird element that if you've kind of not made that jump
Yeah.
to like what they're going for,
You have to be on board.
It's weird. You have to
Yeah.
kind of jump on board really quick. But as a pilot, it didn't do a whole lot.
Right.
So I'm curious
Maybe
to see
set
what
up.
they do now in episode 2, 3, 4.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which episode 2 and 3 on our DVRs we haven't watched yet at home.
I think the best way to describe it is that with the Muppets, at least in my perspective, is that it was funny. Like I was laughing at
Yeah.
it, but it was not the funny that I was expecting, and I can't decide yet if it's the funny that I want from the show.
Right. That's
enough.
a great way to put it.
And
I'll
we got to
keep-
give it, the time to find its voice because it
Yeah.
definitely
Yeah,
is a
absolutely.
voiceless show right now. Like it's just we put Muppets in a show.
Yeah. And then
That's all I really need.
Well,
I
they-
love the Muppets so much; they can really pop up in anything.
Well, they
I'll
need
watch
the
it.
insanity because I mean that was the other thing I felt was lacking in this was that like the Muppets are usually just absolutely in batshit bonkers with
Right.
some of the stuff that they do, and they didn't have that. So they had a bunch of jokes that were likened to the Big Bang Theory in The Office.
yeah,
Ugh.
they're it kind of downtrodden jokes a little bit. Like
You
Kermit,
lose me at Big
Kermit's
Bang
a little
Theory.
Michael Scott in this.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah. And they'll win me over when they feature the Swedish Chef a little bit more. Once he's more of a part of the show, I'll be on board. The Eagle though, he is great.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Sam the
Eagle
Eagle has
is
not
fucking-
lost his voice
You can't
in
say
this.
that.
You can't say that.
My life is a bacon wrapped hell. Can't say hell.
I'll go next.
Yeah.
If that's all right. Were you done?
Yeah.
You're the only one left.
Oh yeah, you already did yours.
Yes.
You went first.
I forgot.
Thanks.
Sorry.
She was.
It's coffee and no real sustenance. It's been coffee and some pastries. So I got sugar and caffeine in me.
Don't we all?
And we're also in a metal sauna right now.
So, where have I been doing? I will talk a little bit about my TV-ness, I suppose, on two different new things this year. Heroes is back. I have not watched the new episode yet. I haven't gotten a chance. I really hope to do that today, maybe. If
I heard good
I don't
things.
know. I rewatched a good 8 episodes of the first season, and it's still great.
Yeah.
Still love it.
First season was so fucking
Absolutely. so good.
And it's just like I really
It's
hope
the only season for me. Like that, no other
It's The
season.
Matrix,
exists.
yeah.
Please, the last 5 episodes of season 3, guys, are garbage. I'm not
there's
gonna lie.
there's still good things in the other seasons, but not as a whole as good as the first.
They lost me when they introduced that one guy who has the black hole in his stomach or whatever.
Oh
the
my
hell
I don't
he
remember
is.
that one. But so yeah, I'm really excited to watch that mini. I think it's more like a mini series.
Yeah.
I'm really excited to watch that.
We'll see if Tim Kring knows
the
what a
one-
miniseries is.
The one new thing that I
no.
watched that I was really surprised at how much I liked it, because I really just watched it out of, like, I have nothing else to watch, and I didn't know anything about it, didn't have much interest. Scream Queens.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed Scream Queens.
I've heard good about it.
Two of you.
It's
That is-
not scary. It's not
No,
scary.
it is not at all. A confession. Yeah, I saw Scream Queens this week, and it was awesome.
It was just so funny. Like, honestly, it's just the part when she goes to get a pumpkin spice latte and she just screams at the barista. Just like her character, the main
is this?
girl. The
Emma
girl
Roberts?
from
Emma
Scream
Roberts.
4.
Oh,
yeah.
I like her.
Like, this is the role that she was born to play. Like, honestly. Like, I swear, she's not that great in pretty much anything else, but she's great as this character. You just hate her, but then you also love her because
She's
just-
honest about her.
She's so
honest to
honest.
herself.
Like, she knows she's a terrible person, and she's given options to do the better things, and she's like, no, I'm gonna do this.
Well, and it sounds like a great marriage of material from material to creator, because it's the guy who did Glee and American Horror Story,
Yeah,
right?
and this is
Like-
a new outing.
And this sounds like it's the better fit than American Horror Story was, because a lot of
Well-
American Horror Story was over the top, and you need something that's very cheeky
Yeah.
to be.
Well, this
Well,
is-
American
this
Horror
is
Story is
so
actually
tongue-in-cheek.
scary.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
there's moments in American Horror Story that I'm like uncomfortable and don't really want to watch it anymore, but I have to because I need to know if they're going to die a terrible way.
It's very creepy.
This one's just funny. It's
Cool.
just like it's almost like what torture porn should be.
Well, no,
Where you're just enjoying watching them die.
there's just a sense of fun in this. I mean, one of the things, because I talked about it with a couple of other people, and a couple of them have said, "Well, it's not scary," and I'm like, I don't think their intention is to be scary.
It's
at
not supposed to be
all on
scary
this
at
show.
all. Oh my
And it-
god, when Deaf Taylor Swift.
Yeah, which,
All right, moving into today's episode, we have to start with a breakdown, which Chris will be bringing to us.
cool.
You're gonna have 30 seconds to do it. Which, I mean, granted, for an hour and 11-minute movie, should be pretty easy. If you can't do it, I'll be very disappointed in you. And just remember that.
You'll insult him.
Yeah,
Very
and there is
harshly.
always, if you did not know this, if you don't do it, I will insult you.
I thought that was just going to happen in general.
Yeah, well,
It will.
that happens. Yeah,
There's still a whole episode.
yeah. There's plenty of time for insults to come later.
So, all right, so we're
you
doing
ready?
this?
Yep, go.
Okay, so Frankenstein, directed by James Whales, and starring Boris Karloff and Colin Clive, is an adaptation of Mary Shelley's illustrious novel. It begins with Frankenstein creating the monster. The monster runs amok, tries to attack Frankenstein's wife, also drowns a little girl. All of a sudden, the villagers decide to try to get him. Of course, the climax happens in the windmill, and the Frankenstein monster dies, or so we think.
Wow.
Impressive.
That took 12 seconds.
So
Nice.
I mean, technically, you failed at doing it in 30 seconds.
That's true. You did fail at the goal,
I smelled that there were insults ready to go.
but I don't really have any insults prepared for somebody who did it that fast. Granted, it only was an hour and 11 minutes, so I mean, 1 hour 11 minutes. So you
it's
know,
a little short
feel
for a
real
movie.
proud of
Well,
yourself.
also, the
Honey.
story is very basic. It's
Yeah.
not-
Yeah.
Within doing it so fast, there's plenty of sex jokes.
I'm not gonna. No. I'm
All
not
right,
gonna.
fine.
I'm not gonna knock down the peg for somebody who did it correctly.
All right.
Okay, so moving
Personally, I
on.
like
Yeah.
the 3-hour version of Frankenstein.
Yeah.
See, but you could say that you weren't terribly satisfied, and he could say, well, I got you there, didn't I?
Funny enough, James Wells said the same thing when the executives asked him about the running time.
I got you there, didn't I?
All right. Well,
Humor.
I'm trying to figure out the best place to start with this thing. I honestly think it's just going to be where did we honestly start with it? Because a lot of people have never seen this thing before, and a
Yeah.
lot of us have and had seen it before. And I think that's kind of the best place to even talk about.
I think a lot of us started with an expectation going in, because a lot of this movie has been kind of absorbed into other pop culture that we've experienced. So we had this
Right.
idea about
Yeah.
Frankenstein going in. So then when you actually see it, it is really not what you expect.
It's one of those things where it's like it's so ingrained in our culture where like as soon as you see it, like most people still even call the monster Frankenstein because
Right.
it's that ingrained where it's just like whenever you see it, it's like, oh, I know what Frankenstein is. It's that monster thing. It's like no, that's not even Frankenstein. It's just the monster.
Yeah.
But
There was-
I'll start first. When I saw this movie, I was 4 or 5 years old. I was
age.
very, very young. My uncle was supposed to be babysitting me, and he didn't want to. So he left me in a room with the very old, like, taped off a TV VHS of just this movie. So it even had commercials and everything in there. He's like, here, Brian, just sit down and watch this. You'll love it.
Awesome.
And I sat there thinking this is the most boring movie I'd ever seen for a long time. And then he killed a little girl, and I was like, well, that's kind of creepy. I don't really like that. And then my mom got home or not home, but wherever I was, while I was at the part where Frankenstein is in, basically the end of the film, where Frankenstein's in the windmill and everything's on fire. I keep calling him Frankenstein now, but the monster's in the, after I just lambasted people for doing it. But he's in the windmill and everything's on fire and he's walking around going, and I just was white as a sheet and just looked horrified at watching this thing die. And my mom's like, "What are you watching?" and picks me up and takes me out of the room. And it's just
She bangs the microphone on the way out.
But yeah, it was. She still brings it up as like that one time Gary just really let her down.
Fucking
Just like,
Gary.
just left him with a horror movie on. He's so young. Apparently had nightmares for like months. It was just a big deal. But
Yeah.
I always remembered it because it was just such like an iconic moment for me of just going like, horror films.
Yeah.
So you had the
That's
exact
cool.
opposite reaction that I did to Gremlins in the way that it affected you. Because I watched Gremlins about the same time when I was 4 and 5, and it terrified me. Didn't know it was supposed to be comedy. I was just scared. And I still can't watch it to this day.
Oh no, I loved Frankenstein. It scared the shit out of me, but I loved it.
See, I had that reaction to Gremlins. However, my parents showed me Frankenstein when I was about 5, and let me preface this: they didn't give a fuck. Which is weird
black
because
and
they
white.
wouldn't let me see
Guard us,
PG-13 or R-rated films. But like my dad was like, "We're gonna watch Frankenstein," and I kind of had the same reaction you did, where I was entertained with it, and
Yeah.
I was like, "I don't really see." Oh my god, what did he do to that poor girl? And I mean, it's really interesting because, I'm surprised that they got away with that in the 30s. How
Just very nonchalant, just tosses her in the
just
leg.
tosses this kid. By the way, we're going into spoiler
So bad.
territory.
Oh yeah, we
like,
spoil
heavy
everything in this
duty.
podcast.
We're
Don't
gonna-
worry about it.
Okay, cool. I just want to make sure we're saying
And
that.
Listen, if you haven't seen it in 70 years, it's been out.
But I
It's
mean,
your own fault
he
at this point.
literally takes this little girl and just like, it's almost kind of black comedy kind
It
of.
really
when he does
is,
this,
yeah.
'cause he very nonchalantly, and what's kind of interesting in it is also the way that the monster does it, because he's not doing it in a necessarily evil way.
No, he's having fun throwing things in the water,
The
and now he's
setup
out of stuff
it
to throw.
is the most important part, because for 1 second you're like, all the monster wanted was to be loved. When the little girl's like, here, you have some of my flowers. Let's throw them in the water. Look how they float. And then you're like, oh, wait. He's going to pick her up and throw her in the water. Only because he loves her and he wants her to float.
Yeah.
And
Can we also talk about how irresponsible it was that apparently that dad let his kid play right next to the water when apparently she can't swim in a 2-foot puddle?
yeah, that's what my issue
was the
was.
That was the other thing I loved. I was just like, maybe
she's
if she
just-
stood up, she would have been
Well,
fine.
Yeah.
I mean, the study of water has come a long way since the 30s.
Yeah.
I feel like now we have
We
a
really
better
got it.
understanding of drowning.
Like, you don't
Maybe
even hear
her
her
head hit a
splash.
rock
You
when she
don't
landed.
even hear her splash.
No,
She's
you
just
don't.
automatically dead.
Right.
Like, this girl was going to die no matter what. She was a ticking time bomb of, I'm going to die because I'm stupid.
Like, I've
I
totally
agree
thrown...
100% with that.
I've thrown my friends into swimming pools at about the same hardness and depth that he did to her, and we're all fine.
Although here's the theory: maybe Frankenstein's monster didn't kill him. Maybe it was the dad who came home and was
Right?
just like,
That's
"Now's
a
my
dark
now's my
twist.
opportunity."
Yeah.
I hate this fucking
I'm going to
kid.
blame it on someone else.
All right, so first time we saw it?
I mean, this is one of those movies I can't tell you the first time I saw it. It's probably in the same vein as like Star Wars, where it's like it was on as a kid. I've seen bits and pieces of it. I put it together. I remember like just watching it kind of in the same way I did yesterday, again in high school. So I knew the story again, and then I watched it again yesterday, and it's just a refresher of all the beats. But it's so ingrained in our memories, and then the parodies, Young Frankenstein, everything else.
Yesterday was your first time seeing it,
yeah,
right?
well, I said that already, so
Yeah.
I don't know if I need to rehash it again. Because I'd never seen it, and there were so many things that, like what you said, we had these pre-concepts of it because there's been so many other versions. Like, I was waiting for him to play a violin at some point. Because I just remember seeing a scene with Frankenstein playing the violin that was supposed to calm down the monster, and I
Right.
was like,
That's-
which movie is that in?
That's in the sequel.
That's in the sequel?
That's in Bride of like that.
Oh. Okay,
that
yeah.
motif, if my memory serves me correct, is in Bride of Frankenstein. Which, by the way, to our viewers, watch that movie.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
I haven't even seen that movie all the way through, so I've just seen so many clips in my life that I literally actually had no idea what was actually in this movie.
Yeah, that's where I was kind of until I watched it again.
And
I always kind of forget. Like it's like
And
with
then-
anything you've seen that many times. I always kind of forget what's actually in this one and not in, like
Exactly.
the other.
yeah, like how Igor's not Igor, Igor's
Right.
Fritz. I was
Yep.
just like, what?
I got into line I was one of the first people. I was able to jump everybody in line on Halloween Horror Nights because I was the only person out of everybody in this 120-minute long line for this maze that knew who Fritz was because everybody
That's
was screaming
amazing.
Igor, and I was the only one. I was screaming. I'm like, I know the answer. No, I didn't scream that because I didn't want anybody to get it, but I'm like, I know what it is.
Awesome.
And I'm like, Fritz was my ferret. And she liked to get into things that she shouldn't get into either, so maybe it runs with the name.
Oh, Fritz was the worst.
You shouldn't have. Maybe.
I really hated Fritz
Yeah.
because Fritz is the reason that everything went to shit.
Absolutely.
Fritz was a dick.
Yep.
Well, Fritz, he's the only person in the movie that dies, and I'm kind of like, yeah, you had that fucking coming,
Absolutely, he
jackass.
did.
Yeah, you totally
You
deserve
shove
it.
you shove a fucking torch in my face.
He was a mild-mannered, like, zombie man, and then you had to go muck it all up.
It's like,
Yeah.
listen, Fritz, did you not know what you signed up for? This doctor is like, Craigslist ad. I need a lab assistant for completely sane and logical
Well,
experiments.
there's even moments where Frankenstein's like, get away from him with that fire, and Fritz actually goes towards him with
I
the
know.
fire.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
actually does not-
Fritz is just a dick.
Don't do what?
Was he
I'm
a
trying to put
free
it in his
fucking
face.
intern or something? Frankenstein should have fired his ass at that moment.
Yeah,
No,
and then,
he's a terror. I mean, first off, did he hire him to carry heavy shit? Because I hate to break
Nope,
it to
can't
him,
do that.
can't do that shit with his hunchback.
yeah, and he does a lot of climbing, and while I'm watching the movie with Brian, I'm like, I don't think a hunchback is good at climbing up and down ropes.
Nope.
Yeah, but clearly he was. He did a great job.
Oh man,
He did an amazing job.
Yeah.
he was
He was
like-
all over the place. He was like Spider-Man.
he was the original parkour. Fritz was the original parkour master.
And that's why he died, because he annoyed everybody.
Yeah.
Stop
Parkour,
it!
parkour.
Just
Oh,
sit
just
still.
kill him. Just kill the guy.
But yeah, no, I also like I kind of had that same thing. I had a lot of expectations and pop culture references going into it, and I watched it around college because I was catching up on things that like I'd only seen clips of
Right.
and all that. And I remember being struck first by the time. It's a short movie. I had put aside my whole evening for it, and I still had an evening after that. But then there was also all this stuff in the beginning, the kind of wrestling that Frankenstein does between him being God and the playing with like just the ethics and the morals of it. That stuff doesn't make its way through the pop culture that cleanly.
Right.
And so that was interesting. And how like there was also this subplot with the father and like the fiance wife,
dad.
The bumbling father.
and like there was all this extra stuff that I hadn't expected.
Yeah.
But it kind of enriched the world a little bit. Like, oh, he's just some crazy scientist who's actually succeeded at playing God.
Right.
And then like they focus on the creation getting out of his control, which again did not expect. And like he was actually part of the maddening crowd until Frankenstein threw him off.
Yeah, it was like ingrained. It's more ingrained in our pop culture than we even realize. The
Yeah.
whole, so sci-fi heavy, playing God. Do you have the right?
And I also like there's this really kind of fun subplot in it that I heard when I was in college in psychology of this is like the epitome of nature versus nurture.
Oh yeah,
Because you have like the evil dude's brain in Frankenstein's body, and he just wants to play with flowers and be loved, and then he accidentally kills a girl, and then he just goes on a killing rampage, and
Well,
things get so much
Yeah,
worse.
the emphasis can't be put enough that he accidentally kills this
Yeah,
girl.
it
Right?
was a
Like it's a
total mistake.
horrifying act, but it's not something of pure evil. It's just that because Frankenstein didn't teach him kind of, for lack of a better term, the laws of the land, the laws of nature and everything. The creature didn't know what he was doing and everything. I think
it's a perfect example of a child in an adult's body.
Well, this is the whole reason, like, I even read the book, like, Frankenstein in high school, was when we were studying philosophy, and we were doing romantics versus enlightenment, because that was happening in the 1800s. That was the period that Shelley wrote this book, is when those were the big mindsets of the age. And I've discussed with this before, I think even on the podcast, of how the monster is the romantic, and Frankenstein's supposed to be the enlightened, and how the two clash and need to be together in like one little harmony, otherwise they're going to destroy each other.
Yeah, that's very cool.
Yeah.
I know you were talking about Shelley and the times. I just wanted to bring up something I noticed watching this movie. At the very beginning in the credits, they don't credit Mary Shelley. They credit Mrs. Percy Shelley as the author of the book.
Let me
Dick
solve
move,
that
guys.
problem.
I know. They
Let me
couldn't
solve
put
that
her name
problem.
on
That is
it.
completely of the time.
I know, right?
Dick move.
Well, there was another interesting thing with some of the what is it? oh god, I'm looking for the best way to describe it. I love some of the ways they try to play up how scary this film is. Like I imagine you guys saw the introduction where the guy's like, "Don't watch this film."
The
It's
introduction
bad
of
for
this is my favorite intro to almost
Oh,
any movie
pretty much,
ever.
yeah.
It
I
is
could
Essentially-
so
totally
essentially
fun.
right out of
believe
my
that this was
python.
terrifying at the time.
And it's the type of intro that like William Castle was so into when he did his
you. Yeah,
movies.
he based it off of that.
Based it off of that, and that there's such a charm to it that you're instantly like, no matter how goofy some of the things can be in this movie, I'm on it. Like,
But it's
beware,
goofy
you're
to-
gonna be scared, and it's like,
And it's goofy to us now. In the 30s, I mean, it still was, I'm sure, goofy to a certain degree, but it wasn't goofy in the way that it is now.
No.
I mean, they still kill a child in this
Yeah.
movie. Like, that's fucking dark.
but they're like, but there's something that's so immersive in that, having the guy come out, watch out. For those with weak constitutions, get out of here.
Yeah,
There's
you
kind of a
were
thing
warned.
that, yeah, you were warned. It brings you into like the horror,
Yeah, and
the
that-
atmosphere of it. It really jazzes you into the movie.
That like evolved into Tales from the Crypt and every other version
Or
of that
hell,
we have.
it's even like on our Wes Craven episode.
Yeah.
It's very similar to the just keep telling yourself it's just a movie. It's
Yep.
just a movie. It's just like that's
that
all.
little fourth wall
So you
breaking
already,
tagline.
so you could already see how this movie kind of influenced a bunch of other things in a very subtle. Well, I wouldn't say subtle way, but in a very interesting way. In the fact that without this film, it could be argued you wouldn't have shit. You could even argue that maybe even the Blair Witch project would not have happened the way it did without this movie kind of having that introduction, because they wouldn't
Yeah,
have been
absolutely.
inspired to do the marketing the way
Yeah.
that they did by making it try to seem like it was the real thing.
Yeah.
The other thing that I also noticed, did you guys notice in the credits that Boris Karloff is not credited as the monster at the beginning? I think
Yeah,
he's
he is at
credited
the end.
I
Yeah,
believe
he is
he
at
is
the
at the end, but at the beginning of
It's
it,
a
when
big
they have the
question
monster,
mark.
it's just a big question mark.
That's
Yeah.
cool.
yeah.
And I love because it gives this. I mean, I know this movie was never meant to be the most horrifying thing ever, but it was definitely a horror film from the very beginning.
Yeah.
And I also like that it has that level of fun that like a lot of people don't really pull off very well, and like this was something that's pulled off fantastically. And I also, because it's something like Sam Raimi always has, like it's a horror movie, but it's still fun. And just by having that who's the monster sort of thing, it's like it nails like this is gonna be
You can
a fun thing.
You can credit James Wales for that one.
Yeah.
James Wales, for anybody who doesn't know, is the director of not just this, but also Bride of Frankenstein, which I actually think is a better film than Frankenstein. If you guys haven't seen it, I cannot recommend it enough. But also The Invisible Man. He's kind of like the godfather of the horror films and everything. And he is the guy who's responsible for, he pretty much designed the mad scientist room in this picture.
Oh,
and
man.
most
Very
of the
cool.
sets and everything, because he came from a theater background, if my memory serves
Which
me
is
correct.
very obvious.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, one of the other. I mean, I guess we should, if you guys want to talk about this and stuff, some of the other, some of the things that are really good in this movie that still hold up. Because I mean, I would argue that a lot of the sets, even though they're Hollywood sets, really, and the production design in this is amazing.
Oh yeah,
Absolutely.
like when we were watching it, specifically when we get into the scene when he goes in the jail cell and we see the window with the shadows coming out of it. Like I'm watching that with Brian, I'm going, oh, this is like German expressionism, Dr. Caligari-ish. Like it was beautiful. Like you could just see that. I don't know if they were recycling those sets or not.
Oh, I'm
but
sure they were. I'm sure they
but
took
Yeah.
inspiration
It just
from that.
there were so many moments. And also when we first get out of the ladies' bedroom or whatever it was when we first meet her, and then we go into the hallway and how big and grand it is, and there's these giant pillars above them. I'm like, this house is gigantic.
It's gigantic,
Like
and
it's
it
so
feels gigantic.
Yeah, it's just
Yeah.
like the sets were amazing, and like
And-
they looked expensive back then. Like to redo that today would still be super expensive.
Well, and anytime, excuse me, anytime there's been like pop culture reference to the mad scientist's lab in present day and modern times, it always seems like, oh, that's a goofy scientist lab. It's not real. But here it actually feels kind of real. Like
Yeah.
you actually
Yeah.
buy it from the first frame of seeing it. It's like, wow, this is a science lab.
You have no idea what any of those things do, but they look cool.
Well, I think one of the key things and stuff is that it's very cluttered. Like
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
a very crowded thing. But also, if you notice in it, and this is just great stage direction and direction in general, is that everything's moving in it. It feels like everything has a purpose in
Yeah.
this lab,
Yes.
so it doesn't feel very goofy. So all the machines are turned on instead of just being in the background because they look cool and stuff. Like, and you see asshole Fritz, adjusting the things and everything like that. Like, and I mean, like the atmosphere in this picture is bar none. I feel like, especially in the mad scientist scene, especially during the sequence when they're trying to bring the creature to life.
Well, my favorite thing about especially the lab itself, is that with the exception of Fritz, it feels like the only person who understands that lab at all is Frankenstein. And I think that really, it adds another level to how great these sets actually are, because the whole time you're looking at it, it's like, really the only person who understands how to make this entire room work is this one guy, and that makes it feel more personalized. It makes it feel more like a real space, and not just a room with these random cool looking machines in the background. it is a very productive space, and that makes it that much more.
And for me, all the more frustrating that people don't listen to him. Because the whole reason shit goes wrong is because Fritz doesn't listen to him when he tells him to get out of here with the torch.
Yeah.
And then his mentor, science guy, doesn't listen to him when he says, destroy the monster, like when he leaves. Instead of destroying the monster, he's like, oh yeah, I totally destroyed it. But before I do it, I'm totally going to like do an autopsy without restraining him, because what could go wrong?
That scene was awesome.
Well, it's like the scene in Austin. Like anytime I look at that scene, I always think of Austin Powers, where like Seth Green is like, "Dad, I'll go. We'll get a pistol. We'll shoot him. We'll do it together." Like, every time I see that scene, I'm like, well, geez, motherfucker, you've already studied the brain because it was stolen from your lab, right? So what do you need? What do you need the brain for? Just like put a bullet in him or something like that.
Dissect his chest or something.
While he was alive. Man. Oh, and I also love the way that he dies is basically the monster just grabs his back and holds him up.
Yeah.
A little bit. Yeah.
But that's such the precursor to all those moments we have where the characters have a chance to end the fucking movie and kill the monster, and they don't because they're greedy or they're curious
or they're stupid.
And this is something you mentioned before we started recording. It's very like you can see where they pulled like Michael Myers, like, out of that scene exactly. Because like the lean up in the background is so original Halloween. I'm just like, oh shit, he's behind you. It's like, oh fuck, and it's perfect, and it's just right there.
Well, I'll give you another thing that also this movie has in its extremely long running time of 72 minutes is the slow reveal. Now, I know I just like made fun of that, but this movie actually does have a very slow reveal in terms of how the monster is shown to everybody.
Oh,
yeah.
You know, you see Frankenstein and Fritz carry the corpse around and everything, but it's always in the shadows. And then the first time they actually really see the full body, he's covered in a sheet, and the only thing that you could see is its hand, which is gigantic.
Yeah. And scars.
And scarred and just looks nasty. And, well, not too nasty. Like, not nasty by today's standards, but 1930s nasty. But then you also see the top of its head, and which just looks abnormal as all hell because it's just so flat.
Yep.
And so you have this anticipation of like what's going on, like what's underneath this thing, and then the next thing that you find, and next thing that you think is you think you're going to see a full body thing. No, they actually wind up spending 5 minutes like kind of building up to seeing the creature in the prison cell before you enter into it.
And the movie's all the more better for it because you don't expect this going in, that you see very little of the Frankenstein's monster throughout the movie. They really know when to.
Then the Act 3, they really use them. But
but they know how to build it up, and it's why we're into horror to begin with, right?
Yeah, you like the pacing. They nail the pacing.
Yeah, you used how back then, and you like I think it's just stopped in the mid '90s for whatever reason when we started. We earned things.
Yeah.
We earned the creature.
Absolutely.
We earned the action sequence when we had to wait through the story to get to it. It's not again. we don't really have to do that anymore. Like they won in the first 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Which is just awful. Like that's why so many horror movies I think are forgotten literally right after you walk out of the theaters because they don't do any real heavy duty build up anymore.
Right. Well, it's exactly like the episode last week with Big Hero 6. So you have that problem of I don't care what happens to these characters.
Yeah.
You don't get that in Frankenstein.
Yeah.
Like I like that really super iconic shot. It's on most of the cover arts that you see of the girl on the bed and you think that she's dead. And like that's such a it's like, oh shit, like you didn't want her to die, and like you don't really know her that well, but you know her as like Frankenstein's fiance, and like it's like, oh yeah, I like her. She seems nice. She seems like she's
very
she's not a
intentioned.
ditz. She's not a ditz in the picture, which is kind of what I liked about it.
She's just trying to get her husband to stop being crazy.
Yeah,
or future husband to stop being crazy.
And I love it that moment when he's like, all right, I'll go talk to him, and then she comes out, she's like, no, I'm going with you, which is such like a proactive like female role, especially for the 30s, because it wasn't just like the man told her to stay, and she's like, yes. She's like, no, I'm coming with you. Like, no, stay. No, I'm coming with you. And it's like I like that they had these little moments that were very extremely progressive in the 30s. That's awesome. And I liked her character. So when you see her, I mean, you told me in the De Niro version she actually dies.
Oh, it gets nastier than that. In the
I won't
version.
If you don't know what happens to her.
I think you just did. It's okay.
Yeah, you told me that she died, so that's so that much I understand. So, but in this one, I liked that she didn't, but I liked that they made the audience think that she did, especially because this takes place after the girl gets drowned, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So you've already seen this one little girl get drowned, and then this door opens, you see another character dead. As an audience, you're like, "Fuck, man, this is intense."
I did kind of have a problem with that because it's very, very clear that he killed that little girl by accident.
Yeah.
So then to go from that 5 minutes later to be on a murdering spree, or we think he's on a murdering spree, was kind of a jump. But then to reveal that
he's
she's
right.
not
his wife
dead,
does live at the end.
that he wasn't
Yeah,
trying
yeah,
to
yeah.
kill her,
I
it
don't
made
think he
more
was trying
sense.
to kill her. I think he saw something pretty and went, I want to touch that.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And his version
No.
of I want to touch that is not very sexy.
Yes, it's basically Lenny from Of Mice and Men.
He just wants to play with the rabbits.
No, actually, I think that's a good. I actually think
Yeah,
that's a
I don't
very
think you're
good
wrong,
description of it. Is that like Frankenstein? Like the monster in this is very much like Lenny from Of Mice and
Yeah.
Men, where he just doesn't know what he's doing.
Yeah.
Another interesting aspect of this picture is let's talk about Colin Clive as Dr.
Absolutely.
Frankenstein.
Oh, yeah.
absolutely, yeah.
Because what I like about his portrayal in this is the fact that what he's doing is mad and insane, but he's not necessarily portrayed as a mad scientist
Right.
or a stereotypical mad scientist, or what will eventually become the stereotypical mad scientist by
Yeah.
the end of this. Because halfway through the film, he's like, and, like most mad scientists, like, no, we have to let the creature. Halfway through the film, he's like, oh shit, I made a mistake. Yeah, guys, my bad. Like,
Like when we really meet him and like when his fiance and mentor and brother, or was it cousin? I don't remember now.
it's
It was his
friend
fiance-
zone.
Friend zone guy. Which was another thing that actually confused me because I always thought it was Victor Frankenstein, and then in the movie he's Henry. Like that threw me off.
I believe in the book though, he's Victor.
He is.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But what I was gonna say is like when we get to see him with them, and he's all like with my sane people over here and my craziness over here. I'm just looking at him. I'm like, you just really need to take a really long night's sleep to think about things, and then I don't think he'd be crazy at all anymore. Like he just wasn't sleeping.
They
That's the
mastered
feeling.
like the obsessive nature of delving into science without going just kooky, like
Yeah.
without going like full wacko. He was just
He just
really
sleep.
He didn't
obsessed with,
stop and think about like
Yeah.
the implications of what he was doing.
Sleep on it, man.
Yeah.
and that's why it was so interesting to have that his professor there trying to be the moral voice for a while until he got a chance to mess with the monster himself.
Yeah.
That like once he finally got sat down to think, he was like, I did this, but should I have done this? Like there was it's hard. That's tough to do, and that actor really pulled it off.
I'll tell you what, this movie was a great version of what Ultron should have been, right?
Yeah.
Oh my god, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, they actually in interviews they said, "Oh yeah, it's like Frankenstein's monster," and I'm like, "No, it's not like."
It's like a
Frankenstein's
failed
monster.
version of Frankenstein's monster where the creator doesn't actually feel guilty, doesn't change his mind or anything.
Doesn't show any type. Okay,
And-
we
Doesn't show any type of character development.
Just getting into the
That'll be a
should
few
we
weeks.
should we not thing, just like in modern day, the feelings that this movie brings up is the feelings that I'm having right now with all of this. Can we transfer a head to a new body science that we were trying to do? Like
Yeah.
they want to
Yeah.
do the first head transplant, and someone had told me that it actually happened and worked, but then I tried looking it up and I haven't found a single article saying that we actually did it. But they're still trying to do it.
Yeah, Walt Disney's
Well, have you
alive
seen
now.
that documentary Ex Machina?
And I just every time I talk to people about it, I just sit and I think about it, and I get so uncomfortable.
Absolutely.
Where else should we move with this thing?
Well, I mean, like we already talked a little bit about Fritz and everything.
Yeah.
So you got the deformed a lab assistant, which like, geez, you could spend an hour pretty much just naming
Like
what
his
films took that
character
from.
is in
Well,
so
hell, there's an
many
entire
things.
animated movie called Igor. It's all about like
I just love the fact. Well, Igor is actually from, in case anybody's wondering, and it's actually spelled with a Y when it originally came out. It's in one of the sequels, and it's in Son of Frankenstein, which is the sequel to Bride of Frankenstein. And Igor is actually played by Bela Lugosi in that picture.
Oh, that's awesome.
Nice.
that's nuts.
And yeah, and that's where that whole thing comes from, because I believe Son of Frankenstein was like a huge hit when it came out. Like it was, I think it was a bigger hit than Bride or Frankenstein when it came out. And that was actually kind of the one where they really took off in terms of like the Universal monster horror movies
Even
with
though
the
that's one we don't remember.
with the sequels. Actually, all three of those are good movies. I mean, Bride of Frankenstein, I think, is the best one out of all of them, because what we were just talking about before, that one actually has a lot more of the book in it.
Yeah.
Yeah, because in the book, Frankenstein and Bride of Frankenstein are in that one book.
Yeah, and also the other thing and stuff is that Bride of Frankenstein is insane. Like in terms of some of the special effects that they do in
that's
that.
awesome.
Like especially when you look at it, you realize they did it in the 30s.
Yeah.
Yep.
Your mouth is to the floor with some of the stuff that they do in that picture.
I think without a doubt, if we had voted on which Frankenstein movie to talk about, that one probably would have won.
Probably would have won.
Yeah.
Well, they make a great double feature also. So, and
Yeah.
it's also only about 70 minutes long. So,
Yeah.
And then after those two, watch Kenneth Branagh's version.
Or just Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein.
There we
I
go.
was
Yeah.
just about to say, like,
Don't-
Abbott and
okay,
Costello.
I really want to
Yeah.
have a separate discussion about why people don't like that version.
Abbott and Costello. I think it's just, I just don't think he struck the right balance of with that film. It like also I love the fact that John Cleese is in it and plays the brain, the guy who becomes the brain.
That's awesome.
We'll talk about that later. You just need to watch it.
Should we? Is it too soon for quotes?
I don't think so.
All right, everybody, at the count of 3, tell us all your favorite quotes. 1, 2, 3.
Well, I actually loved it.
So I have a different one.
Yeah.
I've got another one too.
Oh, so you have grrr.
The more angry one.
I actually do have one also, like, but you go first, actually.
My favorite quote is when the little girl goes, "I can make a boat."
And then she makes a
I'm
flower.
like, "No, you make a shitty boat."
She made a boat. She did a great impression of Titanic.
It's the Mayflower, right?
Like, you can make a flower float, but when it comes to yourself, you're just like, "Not dead."
Yeah. Again, she should not have been that close to water if she couldn't even
Oh,
float.
That kid was an annoying
Oh.
jackass.
speaking, one thing that we didn't mention, the other thing that annoyed me in the movie was when the father comes to town with her dead body. Somehow they all know that the monster killed her. How the hell do you know the monster killed her?
Oh, they didn't yet.
What evidence
They
do you
didn't.
have?
He told her, but we didn't actually talk about that shot, which was one of my favorite shots
Oh,
in the
it's
That
movie.
is a
Great
great shot.
shot.
Him
Yeah.
walking in with her. That is a
and
great
just
shot.
everybody,
everybody in the
following
background.
him in silence and everything. They don't do that enough in films
No.
nowadays.
No,
I
that
feel
was
like.
awesome. That, and we didn't really talk about the mob either. And I love a good
Oh,
good
the
angry mob.
where
It's the first angry mob ever. Well, it's
it's only where it's very like, okay, the dudes are the ones with torches, and
Yeah.
all the women, you stay inside. You're not. Torch Club is for men only.
Torch Club is for men only. I just love how they're just kind of, like, they organize that quickly, and everybody's like, "Up, it's mob time! Dip your
It
like
really
dip the
felt
torches
so
in the
ready
kerosene."
for
It's a town that just loves their angry mobs. We're doing angry mob, angry mob. You know, a kid died. Who cares? Angry mob.
Thank God too that kid died.
Not enough can be said about how on point their mob skills are.
Oh, yeah.
Because they mobilized
Yeah.
fast.
That
They got
town
the
is-
dogs. The
that town
dogs
is
are all
ready to
riled up
go.
immediately.
Like no one today can organize that fast for anything. No
Yeah, no
outrage. Even internet outrage still takes at least 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Wait a second, Ryan. Now that I
ready.
think about it, Age of Ultron did take another thing from this picture because when they have the angry mob and they're like Frankenstein, I would be the one guy to cry, be like, "Hey, wait a second. Didn't this asshole create this fucking thing?"
Let's angry mob him first.
No, but
man.
he like grabbed a torch too, and he was like, "No, I'm one of you guys." Totally.
then they
No.
had
So it's basically like Iron Man and Age of
Well,
Ultron.
they
That's
had
the point that I was
They
getting.
have to kick out Black Widow, okay? She needs to go in the house and go concerned.
You have a vagina. Get out of here.
You go
Man
hang out with
only.
Hawkeye's family.
And man, ouch, that throwing him against the windmill.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. When he was totally fine.
He would not be okay. His
Nope.
spine would definitely be broken.
I
no, this
love
Another fake out death.
For viewers, this is the description I gotta have. So at the end of this picture, Frankenstein is fighting the monster. Obviously the monster wins, so he takes up Frankenstein and he throws him out. So in the one shot, you have Colin Clive like being tossed out a window where I'm pretty sure there is a mat. So then the next shot is a wide shot of this windmill, which is on fire and is still like it has an angry mob around it who also has fire, and this windmill is going around, and you just see this body
He gets folded.
Yeah.
fold, and I think it's actually the back that folds.
Yeah, that's what I mean. His back would have been broken.
And he gets up perfectly fine. And
No, they had to carry him out.
The angry
like-
mob's like, all right, guys, before we burn this down, we got to get him home.
Yeah. He looks upset.
He looks a little put out.
All right,
I think you're God, jackass.
we didn't finish quotes. Another big tangent.
Well, it was a good tangent. We
Yeah.
had to hit some of those things. How do we
Absolutely.
talk about Frankenstein without talking about the angry mob?
Right.
I've been very upset cutting this later, going, we didn't talk about the mob?
I
Or
just
the
want to call
windmill?
them about Torch Club. Can we just call them Torch Club?
Torch Club.
Torch Club.
Absolutely. Torch Club taken straight from this film.
Well, actually, the other interesting thing is that the court, or I guess you could say the center of town that they're in that, is pretty much in every single one of the Universal monster films, which is also why the Angry Mob looks so familiar, because literally the Angry Mob in every single one of their films, when it happens, they group up.
Oh, yeah.
in
It
that-
really is Torch Club.
It's,
It's
yeah,
insane.
it's called the
We're
court.
doing it again, guys.
It's referred
What
to
are
the
we
court
going after
as
this time?
it's referred to as the Court of Miracles. Usually because I think it was first featured in the silent film version of The Hunchback of Notre Dame. I'm not too sure about that, but like yeah, if you look at like any film that has an angry mob that's from Universal, they group up in that area.
Probably most films from Universal, most
Has an
town
angry
squares
mob.
take place there. Is anyone else ready? I have one.
Go for
I
it.
have one too.
I already did mine.
So my favorite, I forgot exactly who was it his fiance's dad or the original scientist that Henry's talking to, and they're talking about it, and the guy goes, Wake up and look facts in the face. Here we have a fiend whose brain, and Henry cuts him off. The brain must be given time to develop. It's a perfectly good brain, Doctor. You ought to know. It came from your own laboratory. It's like bragging to this guy that they broke in and stole a brain from his lab. And the guy's like, actually, the brain that was stolen from my laboratory was that of a criminal.
Rats!
The
And
good
then,
one was there.
Henry immediately dismisses it. He's like, after all, it's only a piece of dead tissue.
I'm gonna go next with my line. I'm gonna read it as monotone as possible so I can properly ruin this line because I can't.
I already
it
know
enough.
what you're gonna do.
So mine, I think, is the line from Frankenstein.
The line?
It was even in our last movie. If you pay attention in Big Hero 6, the ant is watching this movie, and it's this one line that came in there. I forgot to mention it last week, but it comes from Henry Frankenstein. He says, "Look, it's moving. It's alive. It's alive. It's alive. It's moving. It's alive. It's alive. It's alive. It's alive. It's alive."
It's alive is the line from this
Yes,
movie.
and I
Often
can't emulate
emulated.
it nearly as well as I already forgot the actor's name.
Colin Clive.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Nearly as well as he did it, but it is one of the most iconic lines in any horror film ever,
Yeah.
and it is so fucking
Would
great.
you like to know something interesting about that line? There was one last sentence that he said in it, and the censors forced them to cut it out. It was the one thing that they did not want in this, and actually it goes back to what you were saying about playing God, because he actually says, "Now I am God."
I thought he still
No,
said
he says. No, he says. I know what it.
I know what it feels like to be
a
God.
They
Yeah.
fixed
And
it.
in the original version, they cut it out.
Ah.
All right.
Very
So they can
cool.
kill a child, but they can't say
Yeah.
I'm God.
Can't say that.
You either have your child death or your God line. And he's like, "Oh, child deaths will get more viewers."
Yeah.
It's the same
can't
sort of
cut-
thing about how
Better
we're
for
perfectly
SEO.
willing to see people get murdered and slashed and dismembered, but when they're having sex, you better censor it.
Yeah. All right, next.
I'll go next. It's a long one, so I'll read it right now. Henry Frankenstein to his teacher: "Dangerous? Poor old Waldman. Have you never wanted to do anything that was dangerous? Where should we be if no one tried to find out what lies beyond? Have you never wanted to look beyond the clouds and the stars, or to know what causes the trees to bud, and what changes the darkness into light? But if you talk like that, people call you crazy. Well, if I could just discover one of these things, what eternity is, for example, I wouldn't care if they did think I was crazy." I was like, that was a cool line. I didn't remember it.
Yeah.
Just from the pieces, and that aspect of it is something that, again, was surprising to me coming into it fresh, only having the bits and pieces. Just that dilemma, that thirst for the beyond.
It was a cool line, except for all the things that he mentioned, like science has found out since this
Yeah.
book was written.
But there's like that idea behind that you could even adapt that to something nowadays that we look forward to. There was like the sense that he's not crazy.
Yeah.
He just really he wants to know what's beyond. He wants to know what it all means.
He wants to know how magnets work.
Yeah. And then magic.
Magnets, bitch.
I guess my favorite line is one that's a throwaway, but I just love the way the guy delivers it, which is when Baron Frankenstein, he's just like, "I don't like," and I'm not going to say this probably, he's like, "I don't understand why Henry doesn't come back over here. He has good food, a beautiful wife, and a warm bed to come to." I just love this entire monologue.
The essentials.
He threw it out there. The movie could end now, guys. Frankenstein could just come home to his wife or his fiance and cut it short at 20 minutes.
I just love the fact that this Baron, it feels like he's from a completely different picture.
Oh,
at the
yeah.
same
He's a good
time in
character.
this picture.
He's the
Yeah.
first bubbling thing. Like,
Yeah.
did we have bubbling characters before
He's also
that?
a drunkenness because he's he's trying to get the entire staff pissed
Oh my
drunk before
god,
the
we
wedding.
didn't talk about the ending. The ending is so confusing.
What do you mean?
The ending of this movie.
Everything's fine.
Did we miss an Easter
That's
egg?
literally the ending of this picture.
Yeah.
Yeah, everything's fine. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, that's the end. It's like, you all right?
Age
Yeah.
of Ultron. There you go.
No, I'm sorry. The whole giggling little maid, giggle, giggle, giggle. Oh, let's go get him. And I'm like, what are they giggling about? And then he's in there being sick, and then the Baron's like, what do you guys want? And they're like, have some of the old great grandmother's
Oh, yeah.
wine. They were like, shouldn't that
Oldest
stuff
wine
be
ever.
bad by now?
Not if
And then he's all like, oh, they don't need it. Oh, giggle, giggle, giggle. I'm like, what? What is this?
Oh, it's the maids are finally going to get to taste the good wine. They're excited about it.
That's what it is?
Well, he took it away from him
That's
earlier.
stupid.
He gave him the
all
cheap shot.
luscious.
It'll be wasted on them.
That's a stupid
I
way
don't
to
know.
end this
Who-
movie.
who's the monster? The monster himself or that society?
Or the
Like,
Baron.
Yeah, is the Baron like the monster? I mean, that's what I took out
all
of
right.
it.
was just
Start the
so
podcast over. A new
confused.
conversation.
I was so confused at the end of the movie.
I just love the fact that like the Baron's like, "Oh yes, Henry's still going to marry his wife. Henry's fine and everything's fine." And I'm like, you know, if I was the constable in that area, I'd be like, no, not everything is not fine. Your son is going to jail.
You still made a zombie.
You made a fucking zombie that went on a rampage, okay? Given the town is really happy with you because they were able to do Torch Club in 1931.
We're gonna arrest this man. No, you're gonna get rid of Torch Club.
The very first Burning Man.
Guys, send the constable away. We want to do Torch Club tonight.
There's something you better go check out in the country.
Leave the Torch Club!
I made so many torches.
Someone built a windmill. Yeah, Torch Club.
Burn it down.
The guy who runs the windmill goes, no, don't you get it? This is the grain for the entire village. Burn it down!
That would have been a way better ending. Other than
You find out the
killing
economy
maids.
of the economy of the village is destroyed because the windmill was destroyed. It was like the
That's
one
where they
thing.
built the torches. No.
We would have had clean energy since the 30s if they didn't fucking burn down every windmill they had.
Why'd you guys burn it down? Because Torch Club is important. Tradition, asshole.
Suddenly we find out this is also where Wicker Man happens.
Why would that not surprise? Oh god, that'd be a great parody movie where you find out there's a specific town that is just so into doing this that they invite like horror movie things to come over and happen to them because they're just so into it and they just love it so much because they get to at the end take their torches and go after people.
Somebody call Chuck Palahniuk. I've got an idea.
All right, has everybody on?
Favorite
Yes,
quotes?
yeah.
Yeah.
Is everybody? Okay, so review system for this week is going to be movies that borrowed from the original Frankenstein. That can include remakes if you can tie it well enough. But that might be a little tough to do in a way that doesn't sound like utter bullshit. But if you feel like doing it, that's up to you.
Gotcha.
This is gonna be tough.
I'll go
Isn't it?
first.
Go for it.
Because and I mentioned it to us before recording. It borrows the windmill scene and just the kind of the whole aspect of the windmill imagery. Sleepy Hollow, Tim Burton's Sleepy Hollow. Such
go.
a very it even pulls some of the design
Such a
from.
good movie.
Oh, it's so great! I have the Blu-ray of it and watched it recently. I was like,
Oh god,
it's
yeah,
so
it's
great.
I've
one
been
of his
meaning to
best
rewatch
films.
it, but I wanted to wait till October.
It's so good.
And just that windmill scene, like they pull almost shot like everything from it, and
Yeah.
it's so distinct. And
Well, it didn't explode in the
well, right
in Frankenstein.
Explosions.
when you have a headless
Torch Club got a
horseman,
little overzealous.
yeah, a torch club of one.
Yeah.
He was like the last
Yeah,
remnant.
he was as he was
My
as, as he's being,
forefathers of Torch Club.
as he's being dragged by the carriage. Like, God, if only I had Torch Club here. We're gonna be set.
But yeah, no, I liked how that called to it, and it did a very intelligent job of calling back to that movie stylistically and just from a set design perspective.
Okay. Mine's gonna be a little bit more on the nose, but I'm okay with it. I'm going with Nightmare Before Christmas.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Very on the nose with I forget her name, but the female character.
Sally.
Sally, thank you. Sally, which is basically just a Frankenstein's monster. She is just basically made from spare parts and part of a brain. And much like Frankenstein's monster, she really just wants to be loved. But luckily for her, she lives in Halloween Town where people are willing to love her and not just go, oh, monster, kill it.
And she's a little smarter than to drown babies.
Yeah, she's a little bit smarter than that. But she still does she
We don't
still
know
does
if she doesn't
poison
drown
somebody at one point. She still has a little bit of a edge to her. But I like that, especially with fucking Nightmare Before Christmas. So granted, we have two Tim Burtons back to back, but I fucking love that this movie. It just did such a great job emulating the style that was so well made in the original Frankenstein. Like they did such a good job of trying to like make like the mad scientist lab, and granted make it a little bit more animated and cartoony and whatnot. But it still felt kind of how we mentioned earlier, where it was a lab that only he understood how to make, and everything in there had a purpose. It wasn't just there to be kind of cartoony and weird. So I love how much work went into making this very Frankenstein-like, and they even used it with the Sally character.
I'll go next.
Go ahead.
I'm not going to talk about Mary Shelley's Frankenstein again because
Thank you.
I think that movie's wonderful.
Someone has to.
But
This is literally Kenneth Branagh.
don't ruin it for the people. But what I will use as my review for this is Frankenstein in the TV show Once Upon a Time.
Oh
Brian
my god, it is awesome. When you
Brian hates Once Upon a Time, and I keep
sure
trying to explain to
do.
him how it's a soap opera just with magic, and it's wonderful.
Yeah,
And-
who watches Once Upon a Time in our household, Ryan?
Not me.
Is it just you? Thank you.
I'm addicted to that show.
It is. It's a soap opera, but then because I don't remember his name. I always remember him as Aaron from Heroes,
I
the actor.
I believe because he's on iZombie now.
He's also on iZombie, yeah.
I believe his name is David Anders.
He's such a great actor, and he's so underused in Once Upon a Time. And you get his character, like, in the first season, where he's the town's doctor, and you never find out who he is. Like, you're just like, what? Who is this guy? Like, he seems like he has an interesting backstory. I think it's the third season when you finally find out he's Victor Frankenstein. And it's such a, like, comes out of the left field because it's a Disney show. And then you suddenly have a Universal character in it, and they can take it because it's in the realm of
Public domain.
Mm-hmm. And then you find out the whole, like, his character in that show, the reason he makes the monster is because the monster is his brother. Like, he's trying to bring his brother back to life. And they bring a lot of new things into it, but they still harken back. Whenever they go to his world, it's in black and white, which they don't do for any other storylines in the show. And they stick to the hokiness. They stick to it, but then they also give him more heart. And, like, I feel like that's one thing that we also get from the original movie, where there's a lot of heart in it. Mm-hmm. And you kind of feel for Victor Frankenstein, but then you'll feel for his monster more. And in Once Upon a Time, you really just feel for Frankenstein. Because I don't remember, it's been a while since I watched the episode. Does he have to kill his brother again?
He has to kill his brother. I love the fact that he's in that specifically because then I could say to the line of, because at some point Prince Charming goes up to him and punches Victor Frankenstein. So
Yeah.
At the time, I was with my at my parents' house, and my mom walked in and she goes, "Why do you do that?" And I go, "Well, you see, Victor Frankenstein had an affair with Snow White, and Prince Charming didn't know about it." And I was like,
Yawn.
and then in the back of my mind, I'm going, I'm saying this sentence, and I'm not joking about it. I'm actually being
that's exactly
serious.
how I feel every time I try to explain to him what's going on in an episode I'm
and
watching.
every time you do, I go,
Because it's such
Are you
simple.
turn into the monster?
It's such a simple. But it's wonderful. Like, it's just wonderful. And, like, I really enjoyed the episodes where we actually got his character in that show. And the entire last season, they didn't use him once. I'm like,
I would
maybe
love
it's
it if he
because,
came back.
Maybe it's because he's on iZombie now. I don't know.
Probably. All right, next.
I'll talk about the movie that we mentioned earlier, Halloween. I think Michael Myers, oh my God. Halloween is one of my favorite horror movies of all time. Kind of between Wes Craven and this Halloween month, we don't get a chance to talk about it, so I'm going to do it now. But just the whole ominous villain who, for no reason whatsoever, seems like he's moving really slow, but also seems like he's always right behind you. Moves just like Frankenstein. We talked about the classic sitting up with the sheet scene. I love everything about it. The slow reveal in the doorway. If you remember the first time we see Michael Myers is in the doorway, silhouetted.
Horrifying.
Yeah.
Do you have Halloween?
We have to look for it.
I was about to say, yeah, like because
need to watch that again.
I've been wanting to watch that for a while.
See,
I still haven't seen the original Halloween.
Oh,
There's an episode very, very early of our podcast. I think it's like in the 30s. Like, that was one of the first horror movies we
Wow,
ever
you've been
covered.
doing this since the 30s?
Yeah.
This
We
first
weren't
episode
even
was. This is
alive.
actually a retrospective on Frankenstein.
Yeah.
Because it was
Our
very first.
parents weren't even alive. Magic.
Yeah, that was with Nicholas
It's like in
Stallone,
Once
and it
Upon a
was,
Time when everything's connected through time and
Nick.
space.
Who was the guest in that one? Kevin Podgers was on that episode.
Oh, Kevin Podgers.
That one goes back in the old days of
Wow.
After
That was
Dark.
on what, Halloween or John
Yeah.
Carpenter?
The original Halloween. Yeah.
Yeah.
You guys are gonna be a little surprised at this one, but I feel like without Frankenstein, this movie actually the concept of this movie would have never been made, which is
Back to the
Jurassic Park.
Oh, totally.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Jurassic Park, like I'm gonna say, is the film that like you can harken back to this movie just because it's all about science, like man versus nature, like what they should do and everything. I mean, John Hammond is a much more cuddly Dr. Frankenstein, I guess you could say.
Well, he just wants hugs.
Yeah.
He just wants his
I
raptors.
just
Well,
wanted to make rides.
He's almost more, who is it that, the teacher that refuses to destroy the Frankenstein out of greed?
my whole thing with John Hammond was just like, look, I don't have a problem with you creating herbivores. But what possessed you to decide, you know what I need to create? Giant killing machines. Here are the raptors.
But they're so cute and cuddly. Like raptors just want to give you a hug with their mouth.
Yeah.
You just need to train them, and then you can be the alpha. Oh no, there's a new alpha.
Oh, God, don't get me started on Jurassic World and the plot holes that are in that film.
It's so bad.
It's a rough ride, that one.
Yeah.
Could poke a bunch of high-heeled shoes to those potholes.
But you're totally right. I mean, I was joking around. I said Back to the Future. We wouldn't have Doc Brown without Dr.
Oh God,
Frankenstein.
you're right. Because I mean, like the opening. What's the opening shot in Back to the Future? It's a panoramic view of his mad scientist lab.
Yeah.
We wouldn't have the final scene in Revenge of the Sith without Frankenstein.
Right.
So many movies.
God, I could do without that one.
I was just about to say, you know what? Maybe Frankenstein shouldn't have existed.
Yeah, there's
because
some
then we wouldn't
places
have the
where we
final
shouldn't be
scene in
referencing.
Revenge of the Sith.
Hey, that was the best of those three.
Agreed.
Oh, no, I disagree.
Totally. No, you dare say Phantom Menace again. I fucking hate that movie.
But like,
That was not the best of the three because there is no best of the three because they're
but
all
even
terrible.
even
way.
if you ignore the
We could just do a
prequels
battle episode on
at
those
the very
three
at the
movies.
very end,
We just
Return of the
did, I
Jedi.
think.
Which one is? It's like the presidential election. Which is
still-
the worst, the best worst one?
You still get the whole Frankenstein aspect of Darth Vader, even
Absolutely.
in Return of the Jedi. So if you
Yeah.
ignore the prequels,
Yeah.
you still got a machine man who's been built.
Yeah.
And there's still like that echo wouldn't exist without Frankenstein.
And he has like a brain of someone who's kind of no longer existent. He's just more.
He's more
machine
machine now than man,
Yeah.
or he's
Yeah.
more
I mean,
monster
Hell,
than
you
man.
can make the argument you wouldn't have Ex Machina without this.
No,
one.
Oh no,
absolutely
you
not.
would not have Ex
Yeah,
Machina
I mean,
without this.
there's so many movies we could have picked for this review system. That
Yeah.
like it
Mary
is.
Shelley really touched on just the core of humanity, going, what should we and should we not do when she
Yeah.
wrote this story.
Well, let
totally
me ask you
relevant
guys
still.
something.
Forever.
I'd be curious to see if we could look this up right now. Is Frankenstein the first actual science fiction novel ever written?
I don't know if I can look that up.
I don't think you could
know.
ever. I don't know if you could ever
s-
say that because science fiction is such a broad term. you
Well,
know?
let's talk. I mean, like, because Frankenstein was written in
It's
the early
Frankenstein.
1800s.
it's the first popular.
It's
Yeah.
it's Frankenstein.
It is the first
Frankenstein
one.
is
If you
the
look up first science fiction novel, it says the first defining work of horror / science fiction is Mary Shelley's Frankenstein.
Sure,
Can I
yeah.
just say how wonderful I feel as a woman that we did it first?
yeah.
And it was just a whim. Like, she wrote. That's
Well,
one
not-
thing that's amazing about
She
Frankenstein.
did it as a contest, right?
Yeah, it was
That's
just
awesome.
we're bored, let's do something amusing. Let's all just do a contest of writing short stories.
They do say that it is also highly credited to Edgar Allan Poe.
Yeah, but Edgar Allan.
What science fiction or the
The
Frankenstein? Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah, with
That's why I said
horror.
it's so
Edgar-
broad.
It's
but
broad.
when did
They
we-
say the first full
She
novel.
I think
didn't
she
do
did it
it.
first, but I think she did it first. Wait, well, when did Edgar Allan Poe like live? Because I thought he lived in the
I
late
don't know.
1800s.
Brian, my internet's not going so
I
well
have
on
it,
my
but
phone.
it's going to take a little too long to go through all this sort of
But
stuff.
I think
as
that
interesting as it is,
they might have been around the same time, but it's not like we had the internet where people could steal easily from each other. So I really feel like they just happened around the same time, but I would say live separate.
I would say that Mary Shelley.
but if we keep going on this road, we're just basically adding things that I'm going to delete later. So we should probably just move into the voting
Wrap it
system
up,
for the next
yos.
movie.
All right.
So next week's episode will be on the Universal monster Dracula.
Well
Dracula.
done.
Um,
I nominate Sesame Street.
so basically, we're going to do this.
Couch.
1, 2, 3 bad ideas.
We're going to do this in the same vein as our battle episodes, where we all get to name one, and no one gets to vote on the same thing that they named, unless, of course, somebody else names your movie, which is a possibility here.
Yeah, how do we deal with that?
We
So-
will deal with it when it happens.
So
And
let's. I'm sorry. I just wanted to get this out of the way. We're not constraining ourselves to just Universal version of Dracula. It's
Correct. Okay, I'm gonna go first, and I'm voting the 1990s blank film by Francis Ford Coppola, Bram Stoker's Dracula.
Frank Coppola's Bram
Frank
Stoker.
Coppola. Imagine they actually had that. Frank's Dracula. Just Frank's Dracula.
Cool.
Yeah.
Frank Cops. All right.
Frank's
Next.
Dracula.
Who else? I have a couple that I would
I'd-
pick between. So
You
Brian,
can,
pick
you
my-
can name the same film. It just counts as a vote.
Oh, cool. Then I go? 'Cause
Yeah.
Bram Stoker's Dracula. Love it.
same one
Yep.
with a
Vote
little
for that
check
one.
mark after it. Chris, what do you think?
Well, I have Bram Stoker's Dracula. So,
Fuck.
but I was actually going to say Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein
Yep.
Okay.
because that has Dracula in it.
Yep. that
Oh,
works.
interesting.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it has Bela Lugosi,
Bela
as
Lugosi,
Dracula.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's a funny movie.
Okay. I'm gonna actually nominate. I really want to do Dracula Den Loving It because I love
did I know you
Leslie
were gonna
Nielsen
pick
so
that
much. But I'm gonna nominate the one starring Grand Moff Tarkin, the 1958 Dracula.
Oh, the Hammer horror films.
Yeah.
Which one? Tomb of Dracula, Curse of Dracula, Night of the Living Dracula. These are all titles. I'm not making these up.
1958 Dracula, straight up.
Fine, I'll do what I wanted to do before that. I don't know. Van Helsing. There.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
well, we're just gonna see the overacting
Now,
of the overacting.
I just want to throw this out there, Chewie. I think if you nominate Van Helsing for Dracula, you can't use it again for Wolfman. Or
I was still gonna use it for everything.
what are the other
at this
ones?
point.
The Mummy.
Every
or
one of them.
Creature
Van
from the
Helsing.
Black
The next
Lagoon.
one.
Mummy doesn't have. Mummy is not in Van Helsing.
Is
Yes, he is.
Frankenstein?
The Mummy?
done?
There's mummies in Van Helsing.
There are.
There's mummies, but he's not Imhotep.
I don't know. Had to rewatch it then.
Listen, Encino Man saved us from the Mummy the last time.
Has everyone thrown in one?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, cool.
So
So I'm gonna vote for Abbott and Costello.
I'm actually voting Abbott Costello too.
John voted for Coppola's.
Yep.
Yep.
Chris, what do you think?
I gotta go with that. I haven't seen it in a while.
I'm actually voting. I would say Coppola's definitely.
Ooh, it got close. We had ended with 2 votes for Francis Ford Coppola's and 3 for Abbott and Costello meet
It's gonna be the
Frankenstein.
weirdest thing to watch.
That'll be the
It's
weirdest.
gonna be such a shift.
It's
in
not
like,
even
so
just
fun.
about Dracula. It's about all of them.
Well, so
it's
is Van Helsing, if you're gonna argue.
Yeah. It's the first Van Helsing.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we will put online on our Facebook and our Twitter that what won in the episode is Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein. So if you don't want to hear an episode on Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein, you can still
Get
vote.
the fuck out.
You can still
no
vote
longer
for
a
a
listener.
different Dracula film. And as of right now,
Yeah.
the current runner-up is Bram Stoker's Dracula with 2 votes.
Yep.
So really, one listener can vote for Bram Stoker's Dracula, and that's what we will be reviewing next.
Unless a second listener
Unless a
votes as
second
well. Then it gets exciting.
Look, I'm not gonna lie to the listeners. I'm gonna be watching both of them because
We're gonna have a marathon.
because this is because yeah, I love Bram Stoker's Dracula.
It's a great
also.
movie.
I mean Gary Oldman chews the ever fucking shit out of this movie.
Oh yeah.
And as a side note, Coppola directed that one, but then he also produced Mary Shelley's Frankenstein.
That's not a bonus.
He doesn't
Whatever.
want you to talk about that.
The Torch Club is called, and they said burn.
They're both visually compelling stories, and yes,
Hey,
go
there
see
is
them both.
there is a torch club in Bram Stoker. There's actually a literal torch club in Bram Stoker's Dracula.
Yes, there is.
Yep.
Probably in
I love
all
that
of these
movie.
films.
Is there one in Abbott Costello?
I'm sure.
I honestly
don't
don't
know.
know.
There's
I
gotta
mean,
be a
there is
Torch
one in
Club.
Van Helsing, right? At the
Yeah.
very beginning.
Oh, there are several in Van Helsing. They are the torch clubs of the torch clubs in Van Helsing. The Mummy is the
I
only
really
one where the
wanna
torch
make
club
a-
actually works for the
A
monster.
short movie about Torch Club now.
We
That'd be
should.
fun.
All right.
What if Torch Club meets Torchwood?
Writing club. We got an idea.
Maybe it has.
Yeah.
Maybe that's where it got its
They're all
name
going to
from.
talk about how disappointing Miracle Day was.
Okay, so with that, I will say thank you to Chewie and Ryan for being on Almost Always People,
Almost always.
and thank you to Chris for coming on for the first time.
Hopefully, I can return to talk about these horror
Hopefully.
films.
Oh yeah.
And bye.
Bye.
Also,
Oh, you should
Bye,
all
John.
watch
Read a
Buffy's
book.
Vampire.
Buffy.